In 1952, Ian Fleming sat down to write Casino Royale, the spy story to end all spy stories. It was the first of 12 James Bond novels and 2 short story collections, and like all the James Bond books, it was written at Goldeneye in Jamaica. Ian Fleming built Goldeneye after the Second World War, and it was where he spent every winter after that. And as a Bond fan, I think I'm pretty typical in that Goldeneye is on my bucket list of places to visit. So far, I haven't made that trip, but today I have got someone who has been not once, but twice. And Darryl Marsch, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here. I appreciate it, and I'd love to talk about Goldeneye.
Well, Darryl, you wrote a couple of great articles for the website. Well, in fact, your first article was a series of 3, actually, about your first visit there. And I thought it would be great to get you on and talk about what it's like at Goldeneye when you visit, and just to give a bit of an impression of what it's like to what people can expect when they visit. So I don't think there's any reason for me to ask why you went to Goldeneye. I think that's pretty obvious. But why did you finally take the plunge in 2023 the first time?
Well, we had been wanting to get away, my wife and I, and she had grown up in Hawaii, and we were thinking about going there, but it's quite a long way to Hawaii. And we started talking about the Caribbean, and I said, yeah, I'm part of this whole James Bond community on Instagram and the web, and there's a resort there. We knew someone who had gone before, and it was like, wow, yeah, we should check into this. It was a very easy flight from our home near Dallas, direct flight to Montego Bay. I was like, let's do this. And I mentioned it to you. I think we were chatting about, I don't know, probably the delay in the next Bond film or something like that. And you said, well, yeah, I would love to have you write something up. And I ended up writing a very long article that turned into a series of 3 articles. And it really added to, I think, the overall experience to kind of chronicle the event of being there and have it even more firmly fixed in my memory to be able to write about it. And I had just finished, you mentioned the Fleming books. I had just finished reading all of Fleming's books right before I went. And that really added to the trip as well. And so when I wrote the articles, I did my best to do
you certainly channeled Ian Fleming in them, certainly. Yeah, that was a great approach.
I appreciate that. So the idea of going there was, in a way, it was convenience, but then, the whole, the James Bond overlay on top of it is just kind of irresistible for a Bond fan. It really is, the spiritual home of James Bond. When we arrived at Montego Bay, which is about a 2-hour car ride over to Goldeneye.
Yeah, because I guess there are no highways in Jamaica, are there?
Not like you and I are used to. It's not the M4 or something like that. It's like more like a 2-lane road, and the traffic was just snarling when we got there. So when we actually went back the second time, and this is like a travel tip for listeners, which is we spent the first night in Montego Bay at like a perfectly fine, inexpensive hotel. Got up early the next morning, had a driver from Goldeneye pick us up and take us there. And then we got the entire day at Goldeneye, because on the first night there, we were stuck in traffic quite a bit, and then didn't get there until about 6 o'clock. It was time to have dinner, have a chat, time for bed. And I was like, we kind of wasted a day at this fantastic resort. So pro tip, go in, maybe stay somewhere the night before. Also, the Ian Fleming Airport is open for just a very few flights. If you're lucky enough to fly private, it's no problem. But there's a few commercial flights from the States out of Miami now I think once a week. I don't know about the UK, but any event. So those are the travel tips. But that drive out there, it's really quite beautiful along what I guess is the highway, the North Shore Highway. You really get to absorb the Jamaican culture that you don't really have quite as much of when you're at the resort. One of my favorite lines from the story that I wrote, the first story I wrote, is that along the roadside, women baked caramel puddings in clay pots in discarded wheel rooms that were filled with charcoal fires. And it really, to see, the Jamaican people, the beautiful flowers and the trees, and just on the road there, it really kind of heightens the anticipation as you get closer and closer. And then you come up to the gate, and there's nothing on the gate. It just says private property. And you
very welcoming.
You pull in, and then it's like a drive down a gravel road to the reception area, and then you really are transported into the birthplace of James Bond, because at reception they greet you with a Goldeneye cocktail, which is Blackwell rum and pineapple juice with a little bit of lime. Very refreshing after that drive. And then you're whisked into the Fleming room, which is the room just a part of reception, and it's got pictures from Dr. No and Connery and Fleming and various women, Blanche Blackwell. I think there might be a photo of Anne that snuck in there, but a lot of movie memorabilia kind of photos that are right there, and it's that you've immersed yourself into the world of James Bond, and it's a wonderful experience for a James Bond fan. But I would say you don't need to be a James Bond fan to really enjoy it. My wife, she's seen I think most of the Bond films. She likes James Bond. She maybe even read
it's more than my wife,
a Fleming novel. Yeah. I think that's a common experience in our community, right? And but I think that there's plenty to enjoy about Goldeneye without having to go full bore Bond.
I was just going to ask you, what did your wife like about Goldeneye most?
She really said it was the most relaxing vacation she'd ever had. It was just everything was taken care of. The people were. It was 2023 we were there, so it's just after sort of the worst of the pandemic, and there were only about 60 guests, and there was about 60 staff, and so there was always someone who knew you. They greeted you by name. They had your favorite cocktail ready. They just completely took care of us and were just very thoughtful. She said it was the most relaxing vacation that we'd ever been on, but we actually did a fair amount of excursions on this first trip to Goldeneye, because
I was just about to ask you about that. Yes.
Yeah, because I myself, I was like, I don't know if we're ever going to make it back here, so we really need to really do it right. And there was a lot of things that we could have gone to that were very Bondian, but we didn't. We drove past Cinnamon Hill Golf Course. That was part of Live and Let Die, and then you could take a tour of the caves where the villain's lair from Live and Let Die was. We didn't do that, but I did really want to go to Laughing Water, and Laughing Water's
absolutely classic. Yes,
yeah, as we all know, that's where Ursula Andress emerged from the sea as Honey Rider in Dr. No. And I didn't really know what to expect there, and so it's not part of Goldeneye. It's a little bit further to the east than Goldeneye, and so I just asked about reception. They said, "Oh, well, we can charter a boat, and you can have a picnic lunch, and because it's really accessible by boat. And what would you like for your picnic lunch?" And we had some shrimp sandwiches and fruit and other things like that.
That's some kind of service, I've got to say. Yeah.
We our driver, who was like the quarrel for us. His name was O'Neill. And he took us to the boat. We hopped on the boat. We met the captain and his first mate. The name of the boat was Your Eyes Only. And we could fish if we wanted to, but that's not really our thing. And so we just went sightseeing, and we went to different coral reefs. There's a Canadian minesweeper that was sunk in Ocho Rios. Ocho Rios is sort of the big tourist town just a little bit to the east of Goldeneye, and they sunk this Canadian minesweeper, and you can dive over it. And so we had snorkels, and so we swam and dove down and looked at the minesweeper, and then we went to another place, and it was just the most gorgeous turquoise water and starfish. My wife looked it up. The correct term for a bunch of starfish, like a pride of lions, is a galaxy of starfish, and it really was a galaxy of starfish. It was quite amazing.
I didn't know that, because I haven't been to Jamaica. I've been to Puerto Rico. We spent quite some time there, and so we did a lot of snorkeling. I did a lot of diving in Puerto Rico as well. But
that's cool.
But here where I live in Spain, get a lot of starfish. But I didn't know that a group of starfish was a galaxy. So this is very educational. Yeah, it's good.
I'll be here as long as you need me. The highlight was going to be going to Laughing Waters, and we motored up to it, and I didn't really quite know what to expect, because when you see something in a film and then you see it in person, it's quite different in terms of the scale of it. And I didn't really realize that Jamaica has these mountain streams that pour almost ice cold fresh water down the mountain, and it just splashes right into the sea. And so there you are, and you have this like torrent of fresh water coming down. It's very cold, and you can get in it and splash around it, and then it goes right into the nice warm sea on the smooth sand, and it's a very invigorating kind of juxtaposition to be there, and then to think back about Dr. No and Crab Key and all the cinema history really associated with the place. And I had read that Chris Blackwell, who owns Goldeneye now, he was the scout on Dr. No, and he was the one who found Laughing Waters as the place for Dr. No's Crab Key. And so you have to pose for the obligatory pictures, coming out of the sea, like Ursula Andress. And it was a Jamaican holiday. It was their Labor Day when we were there. I think we were there in May. And it was just so beautiful and iconic. When you're in a Bond location and really in Bond's footsteps, it's hard not to feel that kind of connection to the film, and just kind of a deeper appreciation. Like the next time you watch it, like that's right where I was. And So a special excursion there. We did another horseback riding excursion where you get to ride the horses along the beach and then take them into the sea, and it was exciting and beautiful. I'm from Texas, but I'm really not much of a cowboy and not much of a horseman. But I did manage to.
I thought it was obligatory.
Did manage to stay on. Yeah, you would think you need it in order to get a residency card or something, but no, not a real horseman, but did well enough to stay on the horse and enjoy the being on the beach and in the water, and the water just like perfectly clear and perfectly beautiful. And so we didn't really know what all we were going to, whether we would get back. So it was like, we wanted to pack in some of these different excursions, and it was. I would highly recommend to do at least some of those. But the second trip that we took to Goldeneye was only just this past May 2024, and that one I would say was even more of a relaxing vacation, because we did it kind of spur of the moment. And again, we were looking at, should we do a staycation, just go to a hotel here in Dallas, and it would be nice, and we could eat out. And And then the more we got to talk about it and the more we looked at what the bill might be, it was like, for like twice as much, we could go back to Goldeneye and have a fantastic
Dallas
time.
or Goldeneye?
Yeah, it was like,
Contest.
why? Yeah, we didn't even have much of a conversation after the topic got introduced of going back to Goldeneye. And the second time we stayed in a lagoon villa, or a lagoon cottage, I believe is probably the correct term. And so there's a lagoon at Goldeneye, and it's this long ribbon of water that it comes up from behind Button Beach, which is a beautiful swimming beach, and then it snakes along Santa Maria Island, and in front of the dock, the lagoon cottages, and it's so it snakes in front of the docks for the lagoon cottages. It's salty water, but it's also fresh water. But I think if you were to describe it as brackish, I think you'd get the impression that it's like a swamp, and it's quite the opposite. It's perfectly clear, it was like being in an aquamarine swimming pool.
Okay.
And there's plants and things growing on the bottom. There's fish there. You'll see turtles swimming up there. But the cottage was literally built right on top of the lagoon, and so you could fling the doors to your cottage open, step out on the dock, and dive right into this beautiful pool of water. And
yeah, that must be amazing.
To contrast that to the beach experience, because we were in a beach villa on the first trip, it was lovely. It was lovely, and we had our own beach to ourselves, and that's just very nice. And
you had the beach to yourselves.
Someone would come out. Yeah, someone would come out and just bring towels and put them on the chairs for us and get everything ready. And it was just a stone's throw from the bar where we could get our favorite drinks. It was all very convenient. But we really did end up liking the cottages on the lagoon better than the villa, I think, because we could sit out right on the water. They would bring breakfast over to us. We'd have like a traditional, Bondian kind of breakfast of either scrambled eggs and toast, or like a real Jamaican breakfast of saltfish and ackee. And ackee is this, it's a fruit, but when it's prepared, it's sort of is like scrambled eggs, and you have it with like some spicy relish. Yeah.
In your report from the first visit, you said something that I hadn't realized before, that if it's prepared incorrectly, it's poisonous.
Yes, it's like fugu fish. So, and I kind of tongue in cheek am saying in the article that that must be part of the reason that Fleming liked it, is that it hides this dangerous secret that if you don't prepare it correctly, it's poisonous, and if you don't get treated, you'll actually die.
But I remember reading that, and it was something I'd never seen before. And I thought, that can't be right. And I Googled it, and yeah, sure, it is.
Yeah, I think the Jamaican Tourist Bureau keeps it under wraps, but every year I think a few people die from eating ackee that's not prepared correctly. But the food, the kind of a segue into the food at Goldeneye, it's not poisonous. It is quite delicious, and there's a lot of fish that's caught right from the reef, and traditional kind of Jamaican dishes. Blackwell owns a farm up in the mountains called Pontrapont, and so there's fresh greens and fresh vegetables brought in every day to Goldeneye, and it's all just beautifully prepared. It's not like a posh restaurant and hotel in like a traditional sense, like you were going to stay at or the Ritz or the Savoy or something like that. It's got a different kind of luxury to it, where it's sort of a local Jamaican flair, but it's kind of elevated to just like a perfect serene level. The buildings are all kind of built in a very traditional Jamaican style, which is great because, as you said, when Fleming built his house, that's what he did, is he built it in a very traditional Jamaican style. And so there's these wooden jalousies, which are these blinds that you can open, This past time, the weather was so pleasant that we were able just to most of the time open the jalousies and enjoy the salt air, and it was not muggy or uncomfortable, and it was just
lovely.
it was beautiful. But it's a different kind of luxury. There's a beautiful spa, and we did enjoy the spa, and they have herbs and ointments and things that are all like locally sourced, and it's quite lovely. But it's like in a separate little spot across the lagoon. We could kayak over there from our dock at our cottage, or we could make a little walk over there. And it's not on a grand scale, and maybe that's the best way to describe it. It's a big property, but you don't feel as though you're in a big, great, grand hotel. It's always winning all the awards for best hotel in the Caribbean, but it's really unlike a traditional hotel. It's all these little houses and huts kind of dotted along, and you end up having a lot of privacy because there just aren't that many people there.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, just going back to food for a moment, is there a favorite Jamaican dish that you have?
I ended up really liking this escabeche, which is it's a relish, and it's very, 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 very spicy. It has Scotch bonnet peppers in it, and you can put that on just about anything. And they have delicious coconut shrimp there that are fantastic, but on rockfish as well, or lionfish. Sometimes they'll fry a whole lionfish for you, and those are just really, really lovely. And then there's a barbecue night, and there's all different kinds of jerk barbecue, pork and chicken and things like that. And it's
I love jerk chicken.
Yeah, it's a great place if you like spice, and which I do. So it worked out quite well. But the real highlight of the second trip, even though we didn't take a lot of excursions, was I asked at reception if we could go tour Fleming's Villa. Now, you could stay in Fleming's Villa, but it's about $10,000 a night.
I've looked at the prices. It's astronomical. It's really very, very expensive, isn't it? Yeah. But I've seen many people do manage to go and visit. How long do you get there, actually?
They would have given us just as much time as we wanted. We went on that first day. We got back from our massages. We were a little bit late getting there, and I was nervous about being late for this tour. And
there's one thing as a Bond fan you don't want to miss.
Right. So you're a Bond fan, and you're like, oh, no, I might miss seeing Fleming's Villa. But you have to remember it's Jamaica, too, and everything is Yaman. No problem, And so it was like, oh, I'm sorry we're late. It was like, no problem, man, no problem. And they did. And so we just took a little walk up to the Fleming Villa, which is very secluded and separate from the rest of Goldeneye.
But it must have felt amazing to visit, though. How did you feel?
The feeling is, it's a bit overwhelming. And my wife even said so, even though she's not nearly as passionate about James Bond as I. But to walk into it and to realize, like, this was Fleming's residence. This is where he lived. He built this. He designed it. And then you think about the parties that were there and the stories that were told there. I mean, I'm sure they talked about the war, and they talked about whether Jamaica should be part of the Commonwealth or not, and all these conversations that occurred with the likes of Errol Flynn and Katharine Hepburn and Noel Coward, who had residence just up the road from Fleming.
Noel Coward was Fleming's best man at his wedding as well, wasn't he? Of course.
Yeah, and and one thing I would recommend is to do a little reading about it. I think everyone should read all the Bond novels if you're a real fan. But
absolutely, yeah.
And so I think you should do that at bare minimum. There's a book, and I think it's written by Matthew Parker on Goldeneye.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great book.
it goes into a lot of detail on all the affairs and who was the governor and who was with who, and some of it can be a bit of a slog to get through because there's so much detail, but just to get a sense of what it's like and to have that kind of rush back when you walk into the room, and it is it's a very traditionally Jamaican style house. It wasn't designed to be particularly fancy, but you walk through this kind of narrow sunken garden, and then it kind of releases into this expansive living room that you walk into, and it's just a huge scale to the room.
Mm-hmm.
And you just think about the parties that were there, and you feel a real kind of kinship to the man, and it's very moving. We walked into his bedroom. There's a pair of his swim trunks under glass there, next to a book about Blanche Blackwell, who was Fleming's last love, and his neighbor there at Goldeneye, with whom he did a lot of snorkeling,
and Chris Blackwell's mother as well.
And Chris Blackwell's mother, right. And she was an heiress to a food fortune from the UK, and had a big piece of property down there, and was Fleming's neighbor, and that's how they met, and they really bonded over all the kind of naturalistic things that Fleming loved. Fleming loved the trees and the fish, and he knew every spot in the reef, and we got to walk down these very steep steps to Ian Fleming Beach, and you all know the iconic picture of Fleming with his cigarette in the holder, and he's standing by that rock in the sea. And apparently at Goldeneye, Fleming was always referred to as the commander, which was his rank, and of course James Bond's rank as well. And you just really get the sense of who the man was. There was a little play pool that he built for his son Casper, and it just gives you a little insight into what he must have been like. And you get to, of course, sit at the desk where he wrote Bond, which was kind of amazing that it's not roped off. It's not behind, a velvet.
Do you know, I'd never thought about that before, but there's a photo of you sitting at his desk, of course, and I've seen similar photos from other Bond fans who visited Goldeneye, but it never occurred to me before that it's the kind of thing that would be often stuck in a museum with a rope cordon, and nobody would be able to go near it.
Right. It would say no flash photography, and it would be completely off limits. But no, it's like, oh, you should sit at his desk. And it's like, okay, you don't have to tell me twice. So, and then just to think about, how much joy we all get out of the character that he created there, and that to get to experience his home where he would throw open the jalousies and look out onto his beautiful property and onto the sea, and has his typewriter there and clacking away, cranking out James Bond for us.
I know.
It's really, really quite...
It's something that I remind people sometimes. If it hadn't been for Ian Fleming, we wouldn't have Bond. And I don't know where we'd be if we didn't have Bond. It's
right. We'd all have probably a less interesting hobby. But
certainly, yeah.
But it just brought us so much joy. And the other thing that struck me being in the house was that, Bond was really written as a complete second half of his life. And I know a bunch of people have read the Nicholas Shakespeare biography, which has just come out. And I think he does a very excellent job of discussing the first part of Fleming's life, and then how all the way through his spying during the war and his really being in the inner sanctum of the British intelligence and the war management. And then afterwards, what's he going to do? And then, and that's when, like you said in your introduction, he's going to write the spy novel to end all spy novels. And you get that sense that they must have been like at Goldeneye and like talking about these things, or talking about these missions that he had engineered and how they get translated into the Bond books. And that kind of sense of history from being at the Fleming Villa is really quite amazing.
Just a couple more questions, if I can.
Sure.
One of them is about the photography. On the article you wrote for the second trip, I think there were 40 photographs that you sent through to me,
Right.
or something like that. It was nuts. But your photographs are really, really good. They're superb, and it's well framed. I know we talked about this before. You took them on an iPhone, which has a great camera. But you said that you took a photography class. Could you?
Yeah, it was just an internet. Of course, I found it on Instagram. I believe it was Greg Williams. Greg Williams is one of the documentarians for a lot of the Bond films. And if you have a Bond coffee table book like Being James Bond or any of the ones from the Craig era movies, he's the guy that took all the fabulous photos where they're, Bond's there with Silva and they're got their arms on each other's backs and they're laughing and having a great time.
Until you told me, I didn't even know that he had a photography class, but it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's from a company called Skills Faster, and they have a bunch of experts in their field, and it's a bit like Masterclass if you're familiar with that. And it was very easy to watch, and their questions, and you get to keep it for a lifetime, so you can keep going back to it. But it really helped me with the idea of framing up things in an interesting way and taking more spontaneous pictures as opposed to kind of the stage pictures that that I was very much used to, and getting people to laugh and capture them in the moment and just framing things up. And then, like you were saying, that iPhone camera has this wonderful night mode that it lights up the night sky quite beautifully. And I was able to just very simply grab a bunch of beautiful photos of the nighttime. And there's a beautiful bridge across the lagoon from the reception area over to where the residences are. And you get to walk across that bridge. There's a shot of that in one of the articles. So, well, thank you. Thank you for appreciating the photography. It's something I've spent a little bit of time to try and get decent at it. And to go on a trip like this, you really want to chronicle it and remember it. And
you realised I really need to up my photography game. I haven't taken, I've never taken a course. I've looked at a few things online sometimes to improve, and my photography improves for a while after reading anything, but then I forget. So I need it to stick a bit more. But no, your photos were great, and in the show notes, I'll include links to your articles so people can read about your trips, and they can take a look at these photographs as well. Because mind you, they also ought to take a look at your Instagram channel, because you shared many of your photos, if not all of them, on there as well.
Yeah, I did save some specifically for the article, but
thank you.
Yeah, I did put a lot of my Goldeneye photos are up on my Instagram, which is Darryl R. Marsch or at Darryl R. Marsch on Instagram. It's when you make a trip like this, you really, really want to remember it, and so I think that between the photos and the writing, the articles, and trying to do it in a Fleming kind of style, it really made the vacation, both of them, really for me, in order to they became less of a vacation, more just a part of who I am, really absorbing what it's like to be at Goldeneye. And in the articles, if you do read them, what I try and convey is a sense of what it's like to actually be there, because most all the articles that you read about Goldeneye are like, this is how much it costs, these are the different lodging options, these are different food options, which is interesting. But what the memory is the way that it smells there, the way the flowers bloom, the way the trees are just thick in the landscape, and the things like fresh pimento and the smell of that, and just the feel of the of sand between your toes. And that's what I try and convey in the story, and try and do that in a way that kind of pays an homage to Fleming.
Okay, and finally, if you could describe your experience at Goldeneye in 3 words, what would they be?
Oh gosh, it would be, I think it's, one of the words has to be Fleming, because you really are, you're in his home, you're in his, you are in his waters. And one of the things he said was, you're pulling on a mask and fins in his home waters, and you feel this kinship with the creator of this character that we love. And so Fleming has to be one of the words that I would use to describe it. And I think welcoming would be another, because the people of Jamaica are such a wonderful people and such a welcoming people, and they're so happy that you're there. They're so thrilled to share their dishes with you, their culture with you. It's a very welcoming environment. And then probably the last is enduring. It is an experience that you take with you. Unlike maybe we've been to resorts where you go to Cancun, or you go to Hilton Head, or and it was like that we had a nice time there. But when you go to Goldeneye, it becomes a part of you, and it's a memory that stays very fresh toward the front of your mind. It kind of changes who you are in a way, and that you really did get to have this kinship with Fleming, and just a little bit of a flavor of it. That because if you're listening to this podcast, you're someone who James Bond is like an important aspect to their life, and so to go there and having experienced it like that is a very enduring thing.
Yeah, no, I imagine. Okay, Darryl. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. It was very interesting to learn about your experiences of Goldeneye, or rather hear about it firsthand. And where can people find you? You mentioned Instagram. Is there anywhere else online people can find you?
No, I keeping up with one social media account is more than I can really do,
Okay.
I don't devote the serious effort that you do, David, to trying to inform the entire community. I rely on you and others like you
Thank
for
you.
great information and insights, the latest news on James Bond when there is news, and when there isn't news, just reflections on what a great character he is, and how he has really improved all of our lives by giving us that escapism and that joy that we all take from James Bond. So yeah, on Instagram at Darryl Marsch, but otherwise a fairly low profile. I don't try and do too much to kind of educate the masses on Bond. I do like to write. I've written some other things, and I plan to write some more. I'm very interested in kind of delving deep into the literary Bond, and talking about the different elements of the books, and the kind of almost like a literary criticism of them. I'm very interested in that, as well as the films. I wrote a piece for you on No Time to Die, and the Greek mythology elements. That anyway, I thought it was very interesting. I think it makes the film a little bit better. I know a lot of people are less than thrilled with the ending of that film, and but I think if you know the Greek mythology, it makes it maybe a little better.
No, it's always good to read takes like that add a bit of a different slant on things, and give some context in a different way. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then in about less than a couple of months away, I have another Bondian kind of trip coming up.
Yes.
And I plan to write it up for 007 Dossier, and you can read about it there. But the short of it is we'll be landing in London, brief time there train to Paris and then on to the Orient Express as Bond took in From Russia with Love and had his fight with Grant on board the Orient Express.
Yeah, I hope you've got your tuxedo packed.
I do. I have a midnight blue tuxedo that I'll be wearing on the train, and then we'll go down to Venice, and we're going to go to the Moonraker and the Casino Royale locations in Venice, and I'll go to the opera there as well. So I'll get double duty on the tuxedo, and then.
You mean you're going to change out of it?
Oh yeah, I'll bring a whole suitcase full of Bond clothes to wear. Don't worry, I'll have plenty of Bond clothes to wear, and then up to Lake Como, and we'll be staying at a hotel there on the lake and riding around the boat. We're going to take a seaplane. It'll be kind of a little adventure.
Oh wow!
Up there.
So
stay tuned. Be on the lookout. Yeah. Be on the lookout. That'll be.
Well, we'll have to get you back on to talk about that when you get back as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It is fun to do these James Bond locations and to see them and kind of be a part of them. It's something I think everyone in this community really, really loves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Darryl, once again, thank you for joining me, and I hope to speak to you once you've had your forthcoming trip.
Great to talk to you again. Thank you, David. Thank you for everything you do for the Bond community. We really appreciate it.